theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. We're going to spend some time talking about hope, and I think you're really going to enjoy it, because so often when we talk about this program about individuals that have been affected by war, by terrorism, others, we say, well, what can we as Christians do? Earlier this week, we talked about what we can do to support those individuals who have been adversely affected and even persecuted and sometimes killed by ISIS. And today we're going to turn our attention to Africa, and in particular Uganda, talking about the Village of Hope in Uganda. I think you're going to really enjoy this program, and we really do challenge you to consider what you might do to help them in their ministry. And so I'm going to introduce a few of my in-studio guests, and you can listen to the program, or, of course, on our live cast, you can watch it as well and see what we are talking about. Cindy Cunningham is sitting across from me. She has worked with Josh McDowell Ministries, but has actually now been very much involved as the founder and director of Village of Hope in Uganda. And Cindy, it's great to have you on the program with us today.
Kerby, it's excellent to be here. Thank you so much for your opportunity to be able to share what God is doing in Uganda through Village of Hope.
And we were reminiscing just a little bit ago about Josh McDowell. I pulled out an old book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. We actually sent that to Josh. We'll see what he says before the end of the program here. So we're going to have some fun with that. But more importantly, we also wanted to welcome to the microphone an individual that I know some people around the country are watching, because they've wanted to see that. And Rose, you are, of course, also part of this. You are the director of Village of Hope in Uganda. And so, Rose, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View as well.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having us.
We are looking forward to the story, and I guess maybe, Cindy, for just a minute, we might give the backstory. We're going to spend most of our time talking about the positive solutions, but for some of our listeners, they might remember what happened in Uganda, but if not, they might remember hearing about this idea of the Lord's Resistance Army and how young children were actually brought into the military. They were killing others. Just a horrific time in that area of Uganda. Tell that story, if you would, for just a minute. I'll have Rose kind of fill in the details, but it's important to recognize why you're doing what you're doing.
Well, it's just a horrific story. Joseph Kony started in 1986. He began to burn villages. He began to abduct children, ripping them out of their parents' hands, and totally decimating entire villages all across northern Uganda. And these children then were forced to be child soldiers.
Yes.
They didn't have a choice. It was either kill or be killed. And not just kill strangers, but dragging their parents in and saying, kill your parents now with this machete. And if they didn't, they would be beaten or sometimes killed. And these are the horrific situations that we are walking into. And these are the children that God has allowed us to be a part of their lives. Rose can tell you so many more stories about what has happened there.
Rose, obviously we can go into a lot of detail on what happened, but can you, from your experience, share just a little bit of what it was like to be in northern Uganda at that time?
It was so terrible being in northern part of Uganda in the past, I would say, when the war was going on. Joseph Kony came in as he came in as pretending to be a Christian, but then at that time, when he had won everybody's trust, then he just turned his back against the people and started killing the local civilians, started abducting hundreds and thousands of kids. And so whichever time he would abduct them, he tries so hard to do something so horrible to them so that they would never forget that. And so that would brainwash them to go and do worse things to other people out there. For example, they would make these children kill their siblings. They would make the children kill their own fathers or mothers, and it's usually in the exchange of their lives. It's either their lives for the person there to kill, or it's the person to kill. So most of them would have to face the terror of killing their own people.
That's
And
incredible.
after they've done that, it makes them very open to go and kill the others that the rebels forced them to go kill.
Yes.
And that's what most of these kids went through.
I might just mention that we have a link on the website. You can click on the picture either of Cindy or Rose, and it will take you to villageofhopeuganda.com. The DVD that you have here is so well done. It tells the story. I feel like I know so much more even before I met the two of you today. But I do want to encourage people to find out more. But in the midst of this, Cindy, you knew what were some very significant challenges. We have orphans. We have individuals that have gone through unspeakable kinds of things. And in the midst of this, you just one day said, well, Lord, what can I do? And tell that story, if you might.
I've always had a heart for Africa, but in 2006, God gave me the opportunity to go to Uganda. And actually, I wasn't supposed to go to that part, but God drew me to northern
Yes.
Uganda. You walk down the streets. Children in the evening time, they walk like ghosts, trying to find a safe place to sleep so that rebel soldiers won't abduct them. Children are sitting in the middle of dirt with flies on their faces. It's unfathomable. Seas of huts just as far as you can see. And in the midst of that, I was like, Lord, what do I do? When you get faced with something of that magnitude, you can do two things. You can walk away and say, that's not my problem. Or you can say, Lord, you have brought me here for a reason. So when I went back to the U.S., I couldn't not do something. And so I quit my job. Rose and I started Village of Hope, and it's just been a ride ever since, watching God work in miraculous ways to help these amazing children.
Rose, we've heard about how God moved Cindy. Talk about how you and, in a sense, created that partnership. What happened in your life at that time?
I happen to be one of the victims of the Lord Resistance Army. Back when they were just starting the operation in a small village, he killed so many people who believed in him after he had turned against them. So when he did that, I happened to be one of the survivors. And because he had killed so many people in that area, I just felt like I had to do something for the survivors. I had to be a part of it. And when I finished my education, I went back to that danger zone. I felt like I needed to participate and take part. And even if I had lost my I lost my relatives into that war, I lost my friends and many other people, I felt like I should do something. So that's when I went to Gulu and I started volunteering and working with the kids who were sleeping out in the streets. And that time we would host like hundreds of children in one of the night commuters centers. And kids kept coming over and over to the night commuters centers. And that's when, at some point, the government shut down the night commuters centers. And then many of the kids remained homeless. So we started to reconnect them with their family, with the closest relatives. And at that point is when we realized that most of them had lost their family members.
Let me jump in real quickly because we have one of those mandatory breaks. I want to finish that story. But then I want to talk about the solution, and that is the Village of Hope and the various villages and the tremendous success story and a way in which those of you listening can be involved. Let's take a break. We're going to turn our attention, as we are today, to Uganda, but also to what God is doing through these individuals and perhaps through you, right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Last month, Marilyn Sinek walked into a Nebraska coffee shop for her weekly ritual of coffee and crepes. What she received was a torrent of angry words, which I cannot repeat on radio. A woman who worked at the coffee shop recognized that Marilyn worked for the Nebraska Family Alliance and shouted at her and demanded that she leave. Marilyn said that she was stunned by this reaction, as were the other patrons in the crowded shop. She said she's always treated the employees of the shop with respect and courtesy and never broadcast her pro-life, pro-family beliefs. After sharing her experience with her Facebook friends, her story generated lots of comments and made the local news. Marilyn then learned that the woman who shouted at her and refused service was fired for her outburst, and in a previous age, that would have been the end of the story. Not in our world today. While Marilyn received an apology from the coffee shop owners, she also received lots of hateful messages, including graphic death threats from complete strangers. Then came the unfair slander of Nebraska Family Alliance. She noted that if even a fraction of these negative stories about the group were true, she wouldn't work there. Of course, some tried to argue the moral equivalence to Jack Phillips at Masterpiece Cake Shop. She reminded us that Jack will sell you any baked goods, but did draw the line at making custom cakes celebrating Halloween, bachelor parties, and same-sex ceremonies. She even added that if a printer did not want to design a poster for a Nebraska Family Alliance event, she would understand and go to another business. You know, the negative reaction to her story illustrates we unfortunately have a long way to go before true tolerance becomes a reality. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For more information about issues covered on Viewpoints, visit pointofview.net. Pointofview.net.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
My program today is full of hope and encouragement. That's why we're talking about the Village of Hope in Uganda. Cindy and Rose in studio with us. You can watch the program or listen to it, and we again have a link to their website, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Okay, Rose kind of set us up. There was a time which the government was providing services. All of a sudden, you have all these orphans and no family members to connect to them. Cindy, that's when you thought maybe it's time to step in and come up with a solution.
That's right. When you have that much hopelessness, and Rose has told me over and again, these children were hopeless. There was nothing. There was no family. There was no food. They had nothing, no shelter or anything. So Rose said, we need help. And I said, well, tell me, what do we need? We need school. We need homes. We need food. We need clothing. We need medical. Little overwhelming, I tell you. And, you know, we just began to pray. We asked the children, you know, please pray that God will provide us the funds. So we got 100 acres. We started building homes. And in 2010, we were able to move the first, 72 children?
Yes.
72 children to our first village in Buele. And since that time, we now have over 200 children living there. And they're all orphans. Then we opened a second village of 50 acres. And at that village, we have
168.
168. The reason I don't know exactly is because every time I turn around, Rose brings just a few more kids. She seems to find them everywhere we look. And it's hard to turn down children. But at those places, we have homes. We have loving moms. We have schools, elementary, all the way to high school and vocational. But the real thing is Jesus Christ.
Yes.
There is no way that you can take these children from the horrors because the trauma is there. And Rose has been very influential in that. She has done trauma therapy, drawing therapy, dance therapy, and all of these things. But in the midst of all of that, it's God that's transforming the lives of these children.
It's just incredible. Now, I might mention you also have aunties, and that comes from, again, some of the horror of what happened with the Lord's Resistance Army.
That's right. Yeah. Rose, why don't you tell us about the aunties there?
The aunties are the young girls who were once abducted by the LRA rebels. And when they abducted these young girls, they were given to the army commanders and they were abused sexually. Many of them gave birth to kids that they didn't even expect. They were not prepared for this. And as a result of that, most of them hated the kids, and yet they were faced with the responsibility of taking care of these children. And they were also kids still, because some of them gave birth as early as 12 years old. And they totally did not have anything. Most of them did not even know who exactly the fathers of these kids are, because they were transferred from man to man, and they just didn't even know these men. So the army commanders just sexually abused them over and over again, and they kept getting pregnant. And when they came back, as Village of Hope, we organized them. We tried to bring them together under a project called Tabitha Project, where we empowered them. We give them counseling services. We taught them some skills that they're able to use, and they can raise some money to take care of themselves, plus these kids. Because in addition to that, most of these child moms are also rejected out from the community. They're suffering from a lot of stigmatization because some of them were used as they were child soldiers as well. And so they were taken out in the battle. Some of them were returned to their own villages to rob the local community, to kill the local community. And as soon as they return to that society, they are rejected because of the bad things they've done. Even if they did it out without their own will, they were forced to do that. But for a local person who has lost his or her own loved one, they feel terrified. And it's been a problem for them to accept these child mothers back in the community. But I just thank God that under Village of Hope, they've been able to cope. We bring them together, they share their problems. And after sharing, it's, the sisterhood they share amongst themselves and the love that they receive from Village of Hope has really helped them to go on and even cope. And for the few crafts that they make, they've been able to raise some money to take care of their kids. And this is helping them to accept some of their kids more. Unlike before, when some of them wanted to even kill their own children, because they see these kids as a great obstacle to their lives. They see the children as a curse in their lives, because it's due to the sexual abuse that they went through. They gave birth to these children that they are not prepared for. And now they're having to face the entire burden to take care of these children, and yet they have nothing in their hands. So I thank God for Village of Hope, who is trying to support them and bring them together. Not only help them heal physically, but also emotionally through the counseling services that they're being offered.
Cindy, just reminds me that, again, you have such issues to address that are maybe beyond the scope of what the average listener here can even imagine. I mean, young girls taken at a very young age, giving birth at a very young age because they're sexually abused, others who were forced to kill their parents or saw others killed and are going through such incredible experiences. And it really brings us back to the theme of all of this, and it's Village of Hope, because you really believe that the hope of Jesus Christ can transform these individuals who have been through so much.
That is absolutely true. We have seen, I would like to share a story. This is Norbert. I like to share his story. When I first met Norbert, he was in the shadows of the hut that I went to visit. I was welcomed in by his auntie and his brother and sister, but he never came out of the shadows. Finally, he came out. I went to touch his arm and he flinched back. Why? Because when he was 8 years old, he was forced to kill his mother and father with a machete. They beat him repeatedly, but he kept saying, "No, I won't kill them. I won't kill them. I won't kill them," until his mother and father finally said, "Norbert, just please kill us already." We brought Norbert in, And today, if you met him, you would never know. I mean, he's beaming. He's taller than I am. And he loves school. He just loves school so much. And there's such a gentle heart, a gentle spirit about him. How does that happen? Only by the presence of God in his life. God can do miracles in transforming the lives of these children. And that's what we're about. It's the hope, from hopelessness to hope. And that's in Christ. Even with the child mothers, they live in our homes now. Many of them do. They are the aunties of these children.
Yes, they are.
And they become part of a family. And that's what Village of Hope is, too. It's a family that they've lost. They lost their childhood. They're regaining it. They play soccer. They play tag. They play a sort of a basketball. I don't really understand the whole rules of it, but it's similar to basketball. And it's so fun to wake up in the morning to hear the laughs of children.
That's incredible. If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212, talking about Village of Hope Uganda. Going to talk about how you can get involved. But just before we take a break, share the long-term vision, because as I understand, Cindy, you really have as a goal to actually make this eventually self-sustaining with the various crops, the pig farm, and all of this kind of thing, teaching all these skills so that someday you might just say, I think I'm out of a job.
Yeah, well, wouldn't it be great to be out of a job? I mean, I believe as you are a part of a ministry in a country like Uganda, that's what you want. You want to be able to turn everything over. All of our teachers are Ugandan. We have about 60 acres that we're working towards to be agriculture. We have a pig farm, and they keep growing every day because they keep having piglets, and we're selling those. We have mango trees that we're selling. I think last year we raised about $26,000 just in the farming, and that's huge. I mean, we're still in the beginning parts, but not only that, we have older boys. They're taking care of our pigs. We have older boys that have been trained and are also building our villages. We have older boys that are learning carpentry, and they're a part of that. So as they get older, we want them to become self-sustaining. We don't say, oh, you're 16, you're out of the program. We don't age them out. It's when they can become self-sustaining themselves. Many of them, Jacob, I want to be the next pastor at the village, And so it's neat to see that. They say, I want to get my own education so I can come and be a part of Village of Hope.
Thought this would be an encouragement to you. In the second half hour here, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how you can be involved and what is actually happening there at the Village of Hope. So if you would like to know a little bit more, first of all, visit our website, pointofview.net. You'll see pictures of both Cindy and Rose. Click on that button that says visit the website, or you can just go directly to villageofhopeuganda.com and find out a little bit more, but we'll come back and talk about that. But we'll also open up the phones. I'd love to know your thoughts, comments, or perhaps you have some questions for Cindy or Rose. So that number, 1-800-351-1212, 1-800-351-1212. We'll take your phone calls. We'll continue our conversation with them and you right after this.
There is no more dangerous time than when things are going well. Remember Elijah on Mount Carmel? Fire came down. There was no doubt who was God, but what happened next? He went from amazing faith to a time of great fear and depression. Many Christians have been very thankful a certain Democratic candidate for president was not the one to nominate two replacements for the Supreme Court. But as with Elijah, times of great victory are also times of great danger. Moments like this are not the time to take it easy. This is not the time to let our guard down. This is a time to double down on our work in the community, to serve and pray and plan and invest in a better future. This is the time to join Point of View's Truth Team 360 to make sure today's promising gains are not lost tomorrow. Show your commitment to our future by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 800-347-5151. Ask to join the Truth Team. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation today as we talk about what happened in northern Uganda, but also finding a solution, the Village of Hope. And I think you're going to really enjoy the rest of the broadcast in this hour as we continue our conversation with Cindy and Rose. And Rose, let me come to you for just a minute because we've talked about a couple of villages, but I know you have more children than you have in the villages. How do you handle that?
At the moment, we have been trying to bring the kids who are still at the refugee camps to the villages that we have built. But the challenge is that we have limited homes. We cannot bring a child off the IDP camps into our villages unless we have enough accommodation for them, unless we have enough classrooms for them. And so for the kids who are still left there, they still face a lot of challenges because they have no moms, the loving moms that we have who are taking care of these orphans at the villages. They have no teachers to teach them. And most of them are unable to go to school.
Yes.
As much as we try to reach them out in the IDP camps there, it would be good for them to come and live within Village of Hope homes. So for us to do that, we need more homes for them to accommodate them within the villages. And so we are calling out for people to come and support us so that we can bring in more kids from the IDP camps.
Yeah.
Most of them are facing a lot of challenges out there. There are so many things that go on in the IDP camps.
Right.
Most of the girls get impregnated by other men because in other IDP camps you find kids living by themselves. You can find a family of 5 being headed by a child of 13 years, and that's like an adult in their life. And yet this is also a child on her own. And so it would be good for them to be supported so that they can come to Village of Hope. That's where they will get all the support.
Yeah.
And for us to do that, we need all the homes to be built. We need more classrooms to accommodate them. And that's why we're crying out for willing bodies to help us do
Yes.
that.
Build more homes, and again, that's back, Cindy, to some of the things you've been working on, raising some support, and really even the idea of supporting the children. You know, many of us over the years have supported children through World Vision, Compassion International. You can actually support a child through Village of Hope, can you not?
Absolutely. With Village of Hope, we're not only just financially supporting them, you get to be a part of that specific child. We're so small. You know, there's just us. You know, we don't have a huge company or organization or anything. So you actually get to write to that child. They write letters back to you. You'll get pictures. You send pictures. So you get to be a part of that child's life. We have Donna Truitt, who retired. She's only, mid-50s. She retired from her job. She moved there, and now she helps coordinate that. It costs $100 to support one child living at the village, but that includes every single aspect: clothing, food, all of that stuff, teaching, education, medical, every bit of it. And 100%, we can say that 100% of your donation goes directly to support the children at Uganda, because we raise our own support to work here. And so it's a relationship, not just the finances, it's a relationship with that child when you support a child with Village of Hope.
We were just talking about what is going on in the refugee camps, and we've talked about that a little bit on the program, but remind us again, because you are in a situation where there's no structure, whereas Rose pointed out, you could have a 13-year-old who's kind of the mom, which is hard to even imagine. There's no education. They're safer than if they were out in the street, just barely. But at Village of Hope, you are providing them with life skills, with spiritual encouragement, certainly with the opportunity to have an education and ultimately be a productive member of Ugandan society. The contrast is day and night to me, don't you think?
Oh, it is. It is. When you go into, the last time I was there in April, we went to visit one of our IDP camp children. There was about 70 there, and we have probably 200-300 children that still have not made it to the village. When I drove up, normally they smile and laugh and run to the vehicle. They didn't do it this time, and it broke my heart. And the reason is their older siblings have been able to move to the village, and they're still waiting. One of our older boys, his name's Gasper, and he is about 18, and he said, Mama Cindy, do you remember me? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, my name's Gasper. In 2008, you came to our village, an IDP camp, and you said, pray that God would open up a village so that we can move you and you would have a safe place and you can have an education. He says, I'm here now.
That's wonderful. So again, just some opportunities. You've talked about, obviously, ways that you could sponsor a child, you could help build, but some people say, I'm willing to put a little sweat equity, and heavy on the sweat sometimes during certain times of the year.
More sweat than equity, right?
But, go and help build or join or do a short-term mission trip. You do have missionaries on.
Absolutely. We have another couple, Mike and Janelle, and they are from Florida, and, it was one of those things. We needed somebody to build the village. And we didn't have anybody. And so God called Mike and Janelle. We dropped Mike off in the middle of the bush. It was 100 acres. And we said, here's a couple machetes. Here's a wheelbarrow. Here's Ken, which is Rose's cousin. We'll see you in a couple months. We need you to build a village. Bye. And over the next couple years, he did that. And so he had that background of helping with construction and all of that. And like I said, Donna, we also have interns that come. They're right out of high school, right out of college. They don't know what God wants them to do. They come and spend a couple months, 6 months, a year. We have Aaron coming soon, so they can do that. We also have church teams that come over. So we have a variety of ways that you can help in those physical areas.
Well, again, when people come over, is there a place to stay? I mean, there are all sorts of questions. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are asking, do I just bring a sleeping bag? How does this all play
Oh, yeah,
play
we
out?
have out in the back in the bush, we've got a little lean-to that you can sleep in. No, we actually have huts.
Yeah.
And they used to be mud huts. And, we really gotten our initiation with the mud huts, but now we have concrete huts.
That's good.
So they're really nice. They have a thatched roof, so it's a good place.
And just to add on that, I feel like whenever we get the teams around, most of our kids have been lied to while they were out in the bush, when they were abducted, that they're nobodies, that they're useless. And for them to see that, friends are traveling miles, friends are traveling from different areas of the world just to come and see them means a lot to them. It makes them feel very, very important. The fact that someone is able to travel all these miles, I had never known that, people traveled so far to come and see us. But this time I traveled and I've experienced it, and I feel like, wow, it was a very, very long journey, and that's the distance people have traveled to come see these kids. So that makes them even gain their self-esteem. It makes them gain their confidence to know that they're loved, to know that they are very important people. So for one who chooses to come visit the kids, it's a very good thing.
And especially if you sponsored a child, you could meet the child and then keep a relationship. That would go
the
there
children
as well.
actually consider their sponsor their mom, their dad, their siblings. It's a neat thing.
Just before we take a break again, let's talk about what's on the website here. There's places where obviously people can find some of the resources. There's a video that they can watch. There's a children's catalog, sponsor a child. You also have a thing about Beads of Hope. Explain that, if you might, one of you.
The Beads of Hope is, again, what the Tabitha Project, the women, they took paper beads, or paper that was thrown away, and they rolled them into beautiful beads. And God has taken their lives that were throwaway and has changed their lives. And so we take in that jewelry, bring it to the U.S., and we sell that, and those funds also go back. The first home that was built by the prophets of the Beads of Hope, and the name of that home is Love. And when we showed those children, this home was built by the beads you made, it gave them such joy to know that I'm worthless, I'm nobody, but I'm somebody now. I'm an orphan, and I can do something for God.
That's really good. Might mention that each one of those homes actually has a name, too.
They do. We have hope, we have love, we have peace, we have courage. So they can say, I live in hope. I live in peace. I live in courage. I live in victory. Amen.
That's great. We're going to take a break. When we come back, if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, we'd certainly love to get your comments just before we run out of time in this first hour. So that number is 1-800-351-1212. You can visit the website, villageofhopeuganda.com. You'll find all the information there, and perhaps you would like to sponsor a child. Perhaps you would like to help build a home or a school or give and help in some way. I suspect that some of you might say, all right, I've got miles. I'm going to get on an airplane. I'm going to go and see what Cindy and Rose are doing right down there, so they can work all that out with you. But if you'd like to join our conversation, maybe you have a story, a testimony, or question, 1-800-351-1212. We'll be right back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes, and if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Cindy and Rose with us. And just before we run out of time, Rose, I'd love to get maybe your vision as people click on your picture on our website here. It takes you to Rose's story, so people can read that in its entirety. And again, it would be nice to be able to go through all that, but they can read that. But share with us what it would look like a few years from now. What is your vision? Because you certainly have had a vision for this, and each step you take opens some more doors. So what does it look like in the next couple of years?
Thank you very much. My vision for the orphans at Village of Hope is to see the ones still at the refugee camps come to a safe place, which is at Village of Hope, where they have all the love from from our moms and the teachers, and that they could also have the good education that is there, and for them to come and join the fellowship that we have at Village of Hope. Because at Village of Hope, we don't only give them the education bit, but we take them through the spiritual counseling, we take them through the psychosocial counseling, we take them through that entire bit of life that they missed while they're children. Because many of these kids were born during the war. Others were abducted and taken out there, and they've never had a peaceful home. So when they get the opportunity to come and live at Village of Hope, they have the home, they have the peaceful environment, which many of them did not have before.
Sure.
So for the kids who are at the refugee camp, when they come to our village at Village of Hope, they will have the opportunity to experience this all. And on top of that, my dream is to see them go through school, because everywhere in the world now, unless you're educated, you cannot have a decent job that will sustain you. So I am praying that they have the opportunity to go through their education so that they're able to support themselves. And one thing that has really inspired me so much also to work with the kids is the spirit they have, the love they have for each other.
Yes.
And so many of them have expressed their dreams of having more homes as they grow up, so that they can support other orphans.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my dream too that they may continue helping orphans out there, because I know in the world we are going to continue having a lot of crises that will still result into many orphans around. So if they have that spirit, and of course at the moment now many of them are expressing that. Others are saying, my dream is to grow up and open other orphanages to take care of other orphans. And that's the spirit we want all of them to have. We don't want them to forget their past, but use it for a positive thing in the future, so that the other orphans can benefit from them. We are going to grow old, and it's them to take over tomorrow. And so the fact that they're having that spirit now, it's a very good thing. And so we it's my prayer too that we are able to fulfill that, to bring all these kids who are at the refugee camps to come to Village of Hope. And we can only do that with your support.
Yes. I was just thinking that this is the future leadership of Uganda.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you look at the entire continent of Africa, devastated by AIDS, devastated by Ebola, devastated by civil war, even by Muslim terrorism, those that are educated, those that have some kind of stable emotional foundation, they are going to be the leaders in Africa. And
Absolutely.
you're raising up the leaders in Uganda, don't you think?
When when we would go to the camps and say, what is your dream? They didn't have a dream.
Didn't have a dream.
They didn't even know what
Didn't
that
have
meant.
a future. Didn't even think about tomorrow.
They
really.
just wanted to. They
Just
don't.
today.
Yeah, it's just today. It's just tomorrow. Now, when you ask them, what is your dream? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. We have 5 kids that want to be the next president of Uganda. So I don't know if they're going to fight over that or, just support each other through that. But you just never know where God's going to take these kids. And we have had so much opposition. 7 months after I quit my job, I found out I had a brain tumor the size of a tennis ball. And there has been she's been in accidents. The government's been against us. And we know we're in a battle. And I look at this and I say, Lord, you have saved these lives for a reason. And I believe that God has a special, special place for these children. I know that with all of my heart. I can't wait to see what he's going to do. He's already done so many miracles in the lives of these children, in our lives, as we just be a part of this. And so we are so thankful.
It has been a miracle right from day one. We've been walking a miracle.
For sure. And the importance of prayer. We have this Pray for America campaign that we've done, which has some of the verses on prayer and some of my material on spiritual warfare, a biblical point of view on spiritual warfare. But we really want to encourage today listeners to pray for you, pray for Uganda, pray for the continent of Africa, and to recognize that there are some real solutions. So praying certainly is the case.
Absolutely. Number one.
But number two, we talked a little bit about this idea of child sponsorship. Explain that again, because it covers quite a bit, does it not?
Yeah. When you think about maybe World Vision or those type of things, you're sponsoring a child that's living in their household in whether it's a poor area or whatever. When we're talking about sponsorship, we're actually taking our kids out of this very dangerous insecure location and moving them to a place of peace, a place where there is no chance of being raped, no chance of abduction. They're in homes that they don't have to worry that the roof is going to cave in, or they're going to get rained on in the middle of the night, or that they're going to wear a plastic bag to sleep in because they don't have clothes. They have shoes. When they get sick and have malaria, we have a doctor and a nurse right there. We have medication right there. Our education, I believe we're like top 3 in all of the district. Our education is incredible. And our pastor, all of those things are top notch when you think about where they've come from and what God can do in this environment. And their family, that's a really huge, their family was taken. They've never had anything like that. They realize they're loved, they realize they're valued, and they understand the love of God in their life. It's incredible.
Well, again, we encourage you to find out a little bit more. The website is available on our website, and again, it is villageofhopeuganda.com. There's a section there about sponsoring a child. There's also other ways in which you can help. I want to encourage you to certainly pray for these 2 individuals and all the others involved with that, and see what you can do to help out, because this week wasn't necessarily planned, except the Holy Spirit put it together. We've been talking about refugees, and we've been talking about those who have been affected by ISIS earlier in the week. Today we're talking about what happened with the Lord's Resistance Army, what has happened in Uganda, and so we wanted to feature that today. And I appreciate Cindy and Rose, both of you coming in studio today and having a chance to share your story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is our blessing. We're just thrilled to death that this happened in such a short time.
Well,
so thank you so much.
They'll be traveling around, and again, some might even want to schedule you to come to their own church, speak, and those kinds of things.
We would love for that. If other people would embrace what we're doing and be advocates for what we're doing, we need to spread our arms out so we can maximize what God's doing in Uganda.
As I finish the first hour, I always give you an assignment. So the assignment today is to go to villageofhopeuganda.com. There's a place where you can click on the video, and I encourage you to go and watch the video. And then I think they have a share button there, so then you could put it on your Facebook page or a blog, or send it to someone else that needs to know about it, maybe to your pastor, your missions pastor. And so that's your assignment in this first hour, as we've talked about the Village of Hope in Uganda. Well, let's take a break, and before we come back to the next interview, let me just mention we've got a number of things that always are available on our website. My Viewpoints commentary available today, so feel free to click on that. We also, of course, have an opportunity for you to listen to this again. Perhaps you'd like to pass this on to friends, neighbors, coworkers, others that like to know what's happening in Uganda. So again, you can go to our website, pointofview.net, find lots of great information. Let's take a break, though. When we come back, we have a lot more to cover right after these important messages.
When you give to Point of View, does it make a difference? Jeremy Dies would tell you that it does. He grew up listening to Point of View in the back seat of his mom's car, and it helped to shape his thinking.
I had parents that were able to sit across from me at the dinner table after we listened to Marlon Maddox and Kerby Anderson years ago and think through what the scriptures say about these issues of current significance in our lives. That's only possible because Point of View has come along and ministered into my life and made me who I am today. And here I am today defending religious liberty, partly because Marlon Maddox and Penn Dexter and Kerby Anderson were the ones that were pushing me towards all that. They taught me how to think through these issues. They didn't tell me what to think. They taught me how to think.
Each gift you give will change lives. Not every Point of View listener will become a Jeremy, but if they listen for very long, they will be changed. And that will change how they impact and affect the lives of the people around them. So make that decision to change a life today. Join the Truth Team and boldly stand for truth in a world of lies, distortion, and information manipulation. Go to pointofview.net or call 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
First hour today, we're going to talk about this growing threat to children and youth in America. It is a problem of sex trafficking and modern-day slavery, and we've talked about some of this before, but we're going to spend some more time on it today, and we're going to take a lot of that information from a book called In Our Backyard: Human Trafficking in America and What We Can Do to Stop It. Our guest by phone is Nita Belles. She is the managing director of the nonprofit In Our Backyard and regional director of the Central Oregonians Against Trafficking Humans, works across the nation helping victims and survivors of human trafficking, and also is really trying to help raise awareness about modern-day slavery. Holds a master's degree in theology with a concentration on women's concerns. Nita, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Well, thank you for having me, Kerby.
Let's, if we can, put some numbers onto this, and that is there are 27 million slaves in the world today. And to put that in perspective, there are actually now more slaves than during the transatlantic slave trade. Now, when we've talked about this before, I can remember one of the first interviews we ever did with Linda Smith, and of course since then we've interviewed people that have been involved in trafficking, and on a fairly regular basis we have Noel Boucher of Pure Hope on talking about what we can do to stem the tide. But when we first started talking about this, Nita, there were a lot of people that could not believe those numbers, and I suspect even right now some people saying, are you really serious that there are more people in slavery today than during the time when the slave trade was at its height in the 18th and 19th century? But that seems to be the case.
That is absolutely the case. And some people believe there are more than 27 million slaves in the world today. It's something where it's hard to get a count because we don't have people raising their hands and saying, I'm being trafficked. It's a situation where people are not able to identify as being a victim.
You know, and one of the things I, again, noticed in some of the earlier interviews we did was when we talk about sex trafficking in, say, the Super Bowl, I would have, in the early days, people say, well, you must be making this up because I haven't heard the mainstream media covering this at all. The last couple of years, that's kind of changed, hasn't it? I mean, you have a whole chapter about that, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, but it does seem to me that what before was an issue that just a few of you lone voices out there were speaking to, now more and more people in society recognize it's a very important issue.
Yes, it is a very important issue, and you're right. It seems like the last couple of years since New Jersey, New York Super Bowl, there have been more and more people talking about human trafficking at the Super Bowl. And in fact, there's even a little debate about it. And some people say there's no increase, and other people say, you know, there are 100,000 people brought in. And I, having been to the last 6 Super Bowls and worked in anti-trafficking efforts surrounding, I would say that the truth is somewhere in between that. There really is an increase, and we think of about 300%. But there's definitely, anytime there's a major sporting event or a major event where it's a party atmosphere, excess money, and frankly, a lot of male attendees, you're going to have a rise in sex trafficking.
Let's see if we can get to the core of your book, and that is In Our Backyard. I think I read that you live in kind of a rural area, and I would imagine some of our listeners find themselves saying, well, I'm outside of the city, so that really doesn't happen in my community. But I think there are a lot of Americans that probably say, yeah, that sex trafficking that's going on in Cambodia and Thailand, we really need to find some ways to end that. But they don't think about what could actually be happening, maybe even in their own zip code. But what have you found?
Well, I absolutely think it is in every zip code in the United States, and I like the way you put that because it's everywhere. And it's not just sex trafficking, it's labor trafficking as well.
Well, and so again, we've got to maybe understand that there are some things that we can and should do. But let's, if we can, maybe get some definitions on the table. Obviously, we're talking about human trafficking. You mentioned labor trafficking and slavery. Can you maybe kind of set forth what we are talking about in terms of those different categories?
Yeah, there are actually legal definitions for both human trafficking, or both labor and sex trafficking. Until the year 2000, the United States really didn't have any laws against human trafficking, and that's when we brought about the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. And since that time, then we're able to prosecute under human trafficking laws rather than other things, and that's kind of when the awareness began, and thankfully it's snowballing.
Well, it does seem to me that we are seeing an increase, as you mentioned, but a couple of demographics. First of all, most of, especially those that are used for sexual or exploitation, most of them, but not all, but most of them are female. And as a result, that is something that we, as individuals and certainly people in law enforcement, need to pay attention to. If you see a young girl that seems like she's being manipulated by another individual, that may be more than just an overbearing boyfriend, right?
That's exactly right. And even if she says she's not being trafficked or that she's doing this of her own volition, I have never, ever met a victim of human trafficking who didn't say that. They would all say that. They believe that it's, something that they're doing on their own. They're bad people for doing it, and there's just a lot of condemnation around them for it because that's one of the ways the trafficker controls them.
Well, again, we've talked about the fact that you can find them in almost every zip code, certainly a high percentage of female. Where do they come from? In your book, you talk a little bit about shelter youth, those who run away from home. What is the kind of the average age for entry into sexual trafficking? Where do they come from? How do the predators catch them? Can you go through that for just a few minutes?
I sure can. First of all, I'm glad you asked about the age. There was a study that just came out yesterday that actually confirmed what I've been talking about for years and not able to confirm. We've been saying that the average age of entry for girls is 12 to 14 and boys is 11 to 13. But a study came out yesterday that has really placed some doubts on those numbers, and it comes in just about as I would hit it at about 15, because we see I've seen victims as young as 12, and I've known of victims younger than that, but the average age is usually in the mid-teens, because that's the time where they're a little easier to catch. And the way that they are normally recruited is by a boyfriend. It's not always a male perpetrator for a trafficker, but a lot of times the female perpetrators that are arrested are what we call a bottom, which means that in a trafficker's, what he calls stable or group of girls, there is a hierarchy, and the one that he deems the most loyal, his favorite, and they're all vying for that position, is called a bottom, and she has almost as much power as a trafficker. She can recruit other victims.
Yes.
She can punish victims. She collects the money. She sets up dates, and she also has to do dates herself. So the bottoms will recruit, and lots of times they will be arrested as well as the actual trafficker or pimp.
We'll take a break, continue on right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Last month, Marilyn Sinek walked into a Nebraska coffee shop for her weekly ritual of coffee and crepes. What she received was a torrent of angry words, which I cannot repeat on radio. A woman who worked at the coffee shop recognized that Marilyn worked for the Nebraska Family Alliance and shouted at her and demanded that she leave. Marilyn said that she was stunned by this reaction, as were the other patrons in the crowded shop. She said she's always treated the employees of the shop with respect and courtesy and never broadcast her pro-life, pro-family beliefs. After sharing her experience with her Facebook friends, her story generated lots of comments and made the local news. Marilyn then learned that the woman who shouted at her and refused service was fired for her outburst, and in a previous age, that would have been the end of the story. Not in our world today. While Marilyn received an apology from the coffee shop owners, she also received lots of hateful messages, including graphic death threats from complete strangers. Then came the unfair slander of Nebraska Family Alliance. She noted that if even a fraction of these negative stories about the group were true, she wouldn't work there. Of course, some tried to argue the moral equivalence to Jack Phillips at Masterpiece Cake Shop. She reminded us that Jack will sell you any baked goods, but did draw the line at making custom cakes celebrating Halloween, bachelor parties, and same-sex ceremonies. She even added that if a printer did not want to design a poster for a Nebraska Family Alliance event, she would understand and go to another business. You know, the negative reaction to her story illustrates we unfortunately have a long way to go before true tolerance becomes a reality. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For more information about issues covered on Viewpoints, visit pointofview.net. Pointofview.net.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Nita Belles with us today as we talk about her book, In Our Backyard, Human Trafficking in America and What We Can Do to Stop It. We have a link to her website. This is published by Baker Books, and we also have a way that you can order it if you cannot find the book in your local bookstore. Nita, you were talking about using a bottom, using an individual to actually recruit. And a while back, we had an individual that was with us that had been through sexual trafficking, and it almost illustrates exactly your point, because she thought she had this boyfriend, but then when he took her to Las Vegas, all of a sudden he beats her up. There are other women that are actually encouraging her to stay. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people will oftentimes call in and ask the question that you address in one of your chapters later on, Why Victims Stay. And of course, we'll get into that in just a minute. But this whole recruitment is a little different. Obviously, they're predators, but oftentimes it is done in a much more seductive way, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And that is by design on the part of the traffickers. And if I can make just a little parenthetical statement here, when I speak, I'm careful about the language I use. So pimps, I don't use that word often because our culture has given that a positive connotation, and these are, we call them, as we see them, traffickers. The same with
Johns. Yes, I saw you also took the word Johns out of the book too. Great.
Yeah. Sex buyers. Yep, we call them sex buyers because that's what they are. There are a lot of people named John that are very nice. And as far as victims, they are victims, and as long as they're being trafficked, the moment they are out, they're survivors.
Yes. So again, you give us some really good handles there, and I noticed early on that you said you didn't want to use the word Johns, you didn't want to use the word victims. Obviously, sometimes they feel that way or they describe themselves that way, but again, you've tried to do some redefinition which empowers those who have been affected by that, and also maybe calls it as you see it with those who are actually the despicable people that are engaged in all of this. But help us out to understand why an individual might stay. You have a whole chapter in your book about that, and this one is a head scratcher for a lot of our listeners, because they would say, well, if they're getting beat up or if they're being misused or they're being abused, you would think that they would be looking for the quickest way to head out the door.
That's so true, Kerby. And as I said, the perpetrators are systematic in doing this. They talk among themselves about how to keep that person most tightly engaged with them. They talk about giving them small favors, maybe taking them out to McDonald's, maybe taking them to the mall and letting them buy a pair of shoes. And those are intermixed with basically torture, beatings, demeaning statements, just anything that they can do to control that person. And that person is a dollar sign to them. So they are vicious protecting that dollar sign. And so that kind of back and forth, acts of kindness, quote unquote, and then just horrific treatment bordering death is called traumatic bonding, and that is done intentionally by the trafficker. It is a very powerful tool. And in fact, I had one ex-trafficker tell me that when he was losing a girl, that he had a method that worked every time, and that was he'd tell her he was going to leave her, and she would come running back.
Wow. Just incredible psychological manipulation. And I might just mention that one of the things we've done is not only have a link to this book in our backyard, but also an article that Catherine Anderson wrote on sex trafficking that appeared in one of our Outlook magazines. And in there, she says the same thing you talk about in the book, and that is we're starting to see a much more significant connection between sexual trafficking and gang members. What have you found?
Yes, absolutely. There has been a huge connection for a long time, and we are seeing two things. First of all, we're seeing an increase because gangs have figured out that trafficking drugs is, if they have a pound of marijuana and they're selling it, and once it's gone, it's gone. If they get caught on a car stop, the law enforcement pulls them over and gives them a car stop. They get caught with a bunch of drugs. There's no concealing that's wrong. But if they got caught with victims, they can say, this is my cousin, this is my friend's daughter, this is my cousin's son. There are any number of explanations that will get them out of being arrested and convicted. The other side is that we are starting to see people recognize that gang connection and do more about it in law enforcement.
Again, just a lot of great insights in this book. As you say in the beginning, you haven't even covered all of it, and yet in a book that's 230 pages, you feel like you've covered quite a bit. But let's put a few more things on the table, and then I'm going to open up the phones, because I do know, and I am well aware that many of you do have some questions, and I would certainly want to give you that opportunity to ask Nita those questions. So if you'd like to join us, we might even open up the phones right now to get those processed. 1-800-351-1212. If you have comments or questions about modern-day slavery, sexual trafficking, we certainly encourage your phone calls. 1-800-351-1212. Nita, let's talk about what we can do. And in Chapter 3, for example, you talk about the fact that sometimes we unwittingly participate in modern-day slavery by the products we buy. Can you help us understand what we can and should do if we go to a grocery store or we go to a department store and make selections?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the key words we're looking for is fair trade. So we want to make sure that there's no slavery in the history of that product. it's very, very difficult to find fair trade products, and it's also sometimes they are not free of slavery. But I think the thing that we have to keep doing is we have to keep asking questions of our suppliers. And when we do hear that there is slavery in the history of a product, we get loud with the media, with the government, and particularly with our dollars in buying that product.
Now, some people say, well, I'll solve that. I'll just get things that say made in America. But you have a section in your book. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's not a surefire either. You're right. I have a section in my book where there was a factory that was intentionally put in a colony of America, and it was put there so they could put a Made in USA label, but there was horrific trafficking. One of the victims even lost an eye trying to defend herself and other victims that were being trafficked. Courageous young woman. And so it's just important that we ask questions. I went to a grocery store not too long ago, and I was looking for something that I knew could be, I was looking for chocolate actually, and I know that chocolate is particularly known for having slavery in the Ivory Coast in Africa. They traffic young children to harvest the coffee, and then they traffic young girls for sex favors in that area. And so I went to the manager and asked would they please check and see if they had anything fair trade, and they didn't, and they couldn't guarantee it, but I asked them to put it up the chain of command and ask people for it. So the more we ask, the more we're going to get that.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll take some of your phone calls. If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Also, we'll come back and maybe chat for just a little bit with Nita Belles about her website. We have a link to it, nitabelles.com. What is human trafficking, how to get involved, and then some information about her as well. There are lots of resources, chances for you to maybe schedule her as a speaker or to contact her. And if you'd like to know more about this and maybe educate people in your sphere of influence, it could be in your church, could be a small group, could be even in your own family. We certainly do encourage you to get a copy of the book, or else at least go to the website and find some of the material that is available there. We have posted that article I mentioned just a minute ago from a previous Outlook magazine, which is on human trafficking, the modern day slavery, and so we have that as well available to you to print out and to pass on to others and really educate yourself about these issues. So let's take a break, and if you have some comments about sexual trafficking, modern day slavery, maybe you've seen some things in your neighborhood, maybe you have maybe heard about this for the very first time and have some questions about what you can do, we're going to come back with some more practical suggestions, and you can make a phone call to us, and we'd be glad to put you on the air. 1-800-351-1212, talking about human trafficking and modern-day slavery. We'll have more about that and have some conversation with her and you right after this.
There's an old saying that the first casualty in war is truth. Maybe that helps you understand what's happening in America right now. Thankfully, it's not a war with bullets, but there is a war for control. Control of the country and control of your pocketbook. Truth is under fire, but you can help turn the tide by supporting Truth. Join the Truth Team at Point of View Radio. Learn how you can make a difference at pointofview.net/team or call 800-347-5151. Don't let truth become a casualty on your watch. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151.
So what would you do with an extra $500 a month in your budget? Pay off loans, save it, do something fun? Well, it's something you may need to think about if you become a member of MediShare. MediShare is a Christian healthcare sharing ministry, and it works. You can save big time on your healthcare costs, and you don't have to pay for things you don't believe in either. Find out more. Call 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212, talking about human trafficking and modern-day slavery. We are privileged to have with us for a little bit longer Nita Belles, and her book is In Our Backyard, Human Trafficking in America and What We Can Do to Stop It. And I think you know off air, we had an individual that already wanted to see what he could do to help an individual that was caught up in trafficking. So let's, if we can, maybe talk about some of the action items that we could give to listeners on what they can do if they are aware of somebody that has been taken into some kind of ring, and what they might be able to do to help them get out.
Absolutely. And the thing that I would like to say first and foremost, and probably the most powerful thing we can do when we see that, is to pray. And that really, 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 as we all know, does make a difference. So pray without ceasing for this person, because they are going through the most horrific thing on planet Earth. They are experiencing spiritual warfare to a level that most of us have never even considered. So pray for them. The second thing is we want to remember that it's not their choice, and also that they are traumatically bonded to that person. So we can't just go in and get them out, even though that's what we'd all like to do. So loving them is the first key. If you have a daughter, a son, a loved one who you know is caught in this, love them unconditionally. Don't give them ultimatums, I'll help you if you'll get out, because they can't. So just keep loving them. Keep letting them know you're available, that you'll support whatever decisions they make. And they will make some wrong decisions, that's a guarantee. But keep loving them, and you don't have to say it's right that you stay in. You have to say, I'm going to love you no matter what you do. You will always be dear to me. And so those are the first two things to do. What else can we do practically? Practically, we can begin to educate ourselves about human trafficking. And of course, I'm going to recommend that you read my book if you haven't begun to do that. It's called The Primer on Human Trafficking, and I can shamelessly recommend it because I put the best information I knew in there after working in this for 8 years. Mm-hmm. So educate yourself about human trafficking. Have the hotline number in your cell phone. If you can find an anti-trafficking group in your area, get in touch with them. Be careful about what you say in public and to other people about this person, because you don't know what could get back to them. And they will be punished severely if the trafficker thinks that they're losing control. So that's kind of the guidelines for trying to help.
How about we give that human trafficking hotline number so that people can actually program it into their cell phones? Right,
888-3737-888. And I say it that way because it's easy for people to remember it that way, 888-3737-888.
And again, we have that here in case you need that as well. Let's for just a minute also dispel some of the maybe assumptions that people are making. They would assume that if you're trafficking in America, you stay in America. If you're trafficking in Cambodia, you stay in Cambodia. But you do have a section where you talk about reverse trafficking, and it's a little bit like the movie Taken, where you have Americans that might be overseas for whatever reason, or those that were maybe taken here and then taken overseas. So it is something that crosses borders as well, doesn't it?
It sure does. And some of the places that people get caught in reverse trafficking, in any teen magazine, you're going to see articles in the back, ads in the back that say, travel abroad, exciting career, modeling, all of those things. Close the magazine. Don't bite on those things, because not all of them, but many of them are trafficking rings that are advertising in seemingly legit places.
Well, and some that have been brought to this country from Russia or other places again, for modeling, and then their passports are collected, and all of a sudden they realize that that's not what they were brought in this country for. So it is important to do the kind of background work. But let's, if we can, maybe empower some of our listeners. We've already talked about that number, so that's one thing that people might want to put into their cell phone, 888-3737-888. But another is maybe just to help them recognize the signs. And I thought your appendix was very good because it helped me, and I would think it would help our listeners identify somebody that might be in your area of influence, maybe in your community, that is actually a victim. And it's important to recognize that, as important as it is for the police and law enforcement to find these rings, the best eyes and ears, we need to have our eyes open, our ears open. We can actually identify things that maybe the police would never see. So what are we looking for exactly?
Well, first of all, the important thing is to trust our gut. If something doesn't look right, it's probably not right. And so go ahead and pick up the phone and call that National Human Trafficking Hotline. Gather what information you can without endangering yourself or somebody else, and pick up that phone and call. If it's something in progress, then you want to call 911. But I don't want to read all of the indicators for human trafficking, but I can say if somebody looks like maybe they're a young girl and they're being checked into a hotel with somebody that is a man, but it's absolutely not their father, it doesn't look right, that's probably not right. That would be an indicator. As a female victim of sex trafficking, they are not allowed by the trafficker to look in the eye of any male that they are not soliciting. So as a male, if you try to make eye contact with them and they keep putting their eyes down, that would be an indicator. As far as labor trafficking, maybe in a restaurant, and the employees are not allowed to speak to the customers or are demeaned in front of the customers, that would be an indicator. They may have poor health. They may have signs of physical abuse or malnutrition. There may be somebody with them who is answering all the questions. Those are the kinds of things that would be a indicator to me, a red flag.
Very good. Just before we take another break, I thought we might also talk about those individuals that are purchasing them, because, as you've pointed out, they are individuals that are part of the, if you will, demand part of the equation. And it seems to me that there are some things that we can and should do to deal with it on that side of the equation, shouldn't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I got a call yesterday, about a situation like that from somebody who had been out of the life for a number of years. And so it's important to remember that those who are purchasing sex are they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're government officials, they're cops, they're upstanding people a lot of the time. And so it is among us far more than we know.
Well, and again, one of the things that you have here is the commonalities, which I think were striking, those buyers of sex. Median age 37, 41% married, 42% had a bachelor's degree, 35% had attended some college, 81% were employed full-time, 26% served in the military, on and on and on. You go down those statistics, you have this image, Nita, sometimes that these are people in trench coats that live on the corners of the community and are the ones that frequent adult bookstores. Not necessarily. So somebody that could be your next door neighbor, somebody that works in your office, could be one of those buyers of sex, couldn't they?
Yes, absolutely. And the majority of sex buyers are either married or have an intimate partner at home.
That is just amazing. Let's take a break. When we come back, if you'd like to ask a question real quickly, 1-800-351-1212. Nita Belles with us as we are talking about the book In Our Backyard, Human Trafficking in America and What We Can Do to Stop It. We've already given you some action items, but perhaps you have any final questions you would like to ask about this as well, and we'll talk about that. We've already given you a little bit of an idea of What are some of the red flags? What can we do to begin to bring an end to this? And certainly, most importantly, we need to be attentive to this. The first step, of course, is education. That's why we're doing this program today. And, of course, also encouraging you to go to the website that we've mentioned. NitaBelles.com is one of those. We also have posted some articles and, of course, an information if you would want to get a copy of this book. It is published by Baker Bookhouse. Look for it in your local bookstore, but if not, we have a way for you to order it right here online as well. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Nita Belles with us for a few more minutes as we talk about her book, In Our Backyard, Human Trafficking in America and What We Can Do to Stop It. One of the things we haven't talked about, Nita, is the connection, which I see, and I would imagine you do as well, between pornography, and sexual trafficking. Because in some respects, the porn industry is, first of all, recruiting individuals. So that's another warning to mothers and others that might have children that think, well, I'm going to go into modeling, and you end up a different kind of model. And then second of all, just the demand issue that we talked about just a minute ago with these sex buyers. Most of the time, not always, but most of the time, individuals that act out have been very much addicted to pornography in the past, haven't they?
Usually there is a connection between somebody viewing porn and going that next step, and I do like to call it the next step because there's a strong connection between that and then entering into purchasing a human being for sex.
So it seems to me that one of the kind of action items is we need to think about how we can go upstream from some of this behavior and address this issue of pornography. I know you have a chapter in here about help for those with an appetite for porn, but I have noticed many of the people that have been speaking on trafficking also have really felt the need to address this issue of sexual issues, of sexually transmitted diseases, the danger of pornography, how it affects relationships and all sorts of things. And I know that sometimes when they actually prosecute these sex buyers, they take them through sort of a mini course in that way, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a school called a John School, and that is for people who have been caught purchasing sex, and that is one of the points that they hit on during that. Yeah,
I saw that with the John School that you had in the book as well. But again, I think we should really be speaking out against pornography for a number of reasons, for its impact alone on families, marriages, and the rest. But I do believe that it's sort of like a gateway drug. I mean, not everyone that acts out was addicted to pornography, but it is amazing how you see some of those kinds of correlations, and that's, again, something that needs to be addressed, and it's, again, one of those things that I think we should be talking about inside our churches, and again, that's something I hope that people, even pastors and leaders of various groups and Bible study teachers, would begin to address.
Right. There is an organization that's doing a really good job with that, and it's Pure Desire, and I believe it's puredesire.org, Ted Roberts, and he has a program that will actually come right into the churches. Yeah, it's puredesire.org, and he has a program that we have in our church, actually, and it's in a lot of churches across the nation, that will actually call those accountable who are addicted, and it is an addiction, just like alcohol or drugs, to pornography, and it actually changes the way our brain operates when you become addicted. So yes, we've got to speak out against porn.
We certainly do. Just before I let you go, let's, if we can, talk about some of the action items and what people can find when they land on your website, because you have a place where people can get involved. You have various resources. I know you're available for speaking events and things of that nature. People can contact you and, of course, find out a little bit more about how maybe to contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline. But what kind of resources are available on your website, and how can people get involved with what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I love to come out and educate people, help people get their organization started. A lot of times people want to get their organization started, and I have found there's no better way to get an organization started than to have a big event to start it, because you get a lot of people there. You're going to get a percentage of those people who will want to stay on, either to support you with volunteerism or financially, and it raises awareness just having the event. You're doing good for the community. So that's one thing that we can do. Another thing that I'm really excited about is I have been using here in Central Oregon a sticker inside the stalls of restrooms. And we put them there because that is sometimes the only place a victim is without the perpetrator. One of our legislators, I work quite a bit with legislation, and one of our legislators saw those stickers and actually drafted a bill here in Oregon. And we are having a ceremonial signing with the governor tomorrow for that bill. But those stickers will go out to every business in the state of Oregon that has a liquor license, and we ask them to put them inside the restroom stalls. It's not mandatory, but we're hoping to get a good percentage of those, as well as we have recruited churches and nonprofits to go into places and ask permission and put them up inside restroom stalls, convenience stores, rest areas, restaurants, fast foods, any place where a victim of human trafficking may be taken. And these new stickers that we have will be in Spanish and English, and they have been run by the proof test of several survivors have looked at them to say, yes, that would have caught my eye. I would have responded to that.
Again, very creative ideas, yes.
Yeah, and so we'll be using those at Super Bowl this year and putting those in the Santa Clara, San Jose area. And we'll also be sending those out probably by next month. So if somebody has a nonprofit or a church or just feel like they want to go out and put stickers up, they can contact us on the website, and we will get some stickers out to you. We have a minimal charge just to cover our costs, but we want those stickers in every restroom that a human trafficking victim may be taken in the United States. We want them to know there's help. There are people that care.
You can find that on our website that links to Nita Belles' website, and I hope that you will take the time to find out a little bit more about this. For those of you in spiritual leadership, pastors and Sunday school leaders and others, I hope you really will speak to this issue, and all of us, let's become more educated about this topic, and that's one of the reasons we covered it today here on Point of View. So, Nita, thank you for joining us today on the program, Point of View.
Thank you so much, Kerby, for having me on. I appreciate what you're doing to spread the word.
Well, we appreciate you as well. Again, you will find a lot of information on the website. We have information about the book. We have a link to our website. There are a couple of videos you might want to watch there as well, and that will give you a better understanding of what she's doing. Of course, you mentioned those stickers, which you might want to put up in appropriate places. And, of course, we have the article by Catherine Anderson on sex trafficking, which is actually from our Outlook magazine, but you can download that. It will take you about 2 pages, and you can pass that on to individuals that might want to learn a little bit more about this issue, or maybe just for the first time you're trying to educate them about this issue. I am still amazed how many people have really not known too much about this topic, and that's why from time to time we have covered it here on Point of View. Next hour, we're going to get into some other very important topics, but let me again mention that if you'd like some more information about this, we have, of course, information about the book. We also give you an opportunity, if you would like to listen to this broadcast again or to watch it. It's available on our website, pointofview.net. Perhaps you know somebody that needs to know about some of this. We have this information on our website, and again, as you listen to it or watch it, or even find one of the articles, you can click that share button and send it to others. That way they can benefit from some of the things you've had a chance to hear today. When we come back in just a few minutes, we're going to talk about be the best mom you can be. But just before we do so, again, let me mention that we have lots of information on our website about this book and about some of the other resources. You can also get my Viewpoints commentary, which is available today. So it's all available at the website, pointofview.net. And as you go there, don't forget, we do depend upon your financial gifts to support this ministry, so anything you can do would be greatly appreciated. We'll be back right after this.
When you give to Point of View, does it make a difference? Jeremy Dies would tell you that it does. He grew up listening to Point of View in the back seat of his mom's car, and it helped to shape his thinking.
I had parents that were able to sit across from me at the dinner table after we listened to Marlon Maddox and Kerby Anderson years ago and think through what the scriptures say about these issues of current significance in our lives. That's only possible because Point of View has come along and ministered into my life and made me who I am today. And here I am today defending religious liberty, partly because Marlon Maddox and Penn Dexter and Kerby Anderson were the ones that were pushing me towards all that. They taught me how to think through these issues. They didn't tell me what to think. They taught me how to think.
Each gift you give will change lives. Not every Point of View listener will become a Jeremy, but if they listen for very long, they will be changed. And that will change how they impact and affect the lives of the people around them. So make that decision to change a life today. Join the Truth Team and boldly stand for truth in a world of lies, distortion, and information manipulation. Go to pointofview.net or call 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing, I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour today, we're going to talk about moms and dads, and we're going to do so with an individual who's been on our program a couple of times before, both in studio and by phone, Gregory Slayton. Matter of fact, you might remember his book, Be a Better Dad Today, 10 Tools Every Father Needs, as well as his wife has written a book called Be the Best Mom You Can Be, a practical guide to raising whole children in a broken generation. And we have information about that new book on the website. And Greg, I appreciate you joining us today here on Point of View.
Kerby, absolutely a pleasure to be with you, my friend. Thanks so much.
Let me give you a formal introduction, because we've picked up some radio stations since you've been on. We've had you in studio. We've had you by phone. We've replayed the broadcast even when you haven't been with us. But he is an individual that is an author, businessman, diplomat, actually served as an ambassador, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. Has also been a speaker and teacher in so many different venues, of course, at Dartmouth, which, of course, is one of the places where he graduated from, but all the way over into China. So he's been an entrepreneur. I've seen some of your TED Talks on these issues of dad, but also, of course, your wife. She's not feeling well today, so you get to do double duty to cover her new book, Be the Best Mom You Can Be. And I think between these two books, we'll have more than enough to talk about. But this is part of your passion. You grew up with... Is. Yeah, go ahead, because you grew up with a dad that wasn't really there. She grew up with kind of a broken mom, and you really wanted to pass these positive principles on to the next generation. Speak about it then.
Well, that's exactly right, Kerby. That's exactly right. We want to help moms and dads, you know, as much as we can, because we recognize ourselves that we need help. And, you know, even if you came from a suboptimal situation, and that, frankly, is almost all of us, you know, you can be a really good mom and a really good dad. And it starts with the fact that we've got a Heavenly Father who loves us so much and wants to help us. And that's, you know, it's been a passion. Yeah, my father abandoned me when my brothers and I were fairly young. And Marina's mom, unfortunately, suffered from alcoholism and some other very severe problems. But, you know, something, Kerby, as you know, we've got a great Heavenly Father who wants us to be the very best mom and dad we can be.
You've traveled around quite a bit. I've been a chance to kind of see your participation in various events, and been at breakfast where you've done this and seen some other things, and have taken these ideas to other cultures and countries as well. This is a very significant need, because if we don't get it right about moms and dads, all sorts of social problems, many of which we talked about in the first hour, ensue, don't they?
Well, that's absolutely right, Kerby. The research is exceedingly clear that children who grow up without committed moms and without committed dads are much more likely, and I'm not talking about 5% or 10% more likely. I'm talking about, you know, 3, 4, 5 times more likely to be, you know, teenage drug addicts, or to be incarcerated, to be, that is to say, convicted of a felony, or even to commit suicide. It's just horrible. And none of us moms and dads want to make that. Want to lock our kids into that kind of a future. So, yeah, being a good mom and a good dad is absolutely critical, not just to our family's future, but to the future of our civilization, of our society.
I want to get to your wife's book in just a minute, but again, for some of our listeners that maybe have not heard the previous interviews I've done with you, you have 10 tools for fatherhood, and I'll just pick out a couple just to illustrate them, because I think they cross over very well into what your wife Marina has been talking about. But one was this idea of all-in marriage. A committed marriage is a key to a happy family, which is why loving your wife is one of the greatest gifts you can give your children. And it seems to me that if you get that one right, some of these other tools fall into place pretty quickly, don't they?
That's exactly right, Kerby. That's why that one, the all-in marriage tool, is the second of the 10 tools. It's so important. And that's good. The book is Be a Better Dad Today. But, I didn't want to write just a theoretical pie-in-the-sky book. I wanted to help myself and help others to be a better dad. In fact, this whole book started as notes to myself because I realized I didn't want to be a father like my American dad, who really was a failed father and then abandoned us entirely. I wanted to be a better dad, and I knew I needed help. So I wrote these notes over a period of 25 years as we raised our 4 kids and did a lot of research both here in America and overseas. And I really saw that this all-in marriage idea, the idea of being really committed to your wife and to helping model for your children what a husband and wife are supposed to be. Not that we're perfect, not that we don't have struggles. Of course we do. All marriages are difficult. But, that over time we can work things out, we can hug it out, we can love each other, we can come to, a place of understanding and mutual, cooperation. That's critical for our children today, especially in the next generation, which really questions the whole institution of marriage, and that's very, very risky for our society.
Gregory Slayton with us as we talk about his book for just a few more minutes, Be a Better Dad Today, and then we'll be talking about his wife's book that he co-authored with as well, Be the Best Mom You Can Be. And we have information about these books and their outreach and ministry on our website, pointofview.net. Let me take one more. A true moral compass and true humility, setting a high moral standard for yourself and your family, and transferring those standards to your children over time is the most important inheritance you as a father can give to your children. Greg, one of the things I think is so important is we need to know how to pass the baton. And if you've ever watched a track meet where somebody drops the baton, that's kind of a visual illustration of, I think, what's been happening in this country and in other countries around the world.
Well, that's right. That's exactly right, Kerby. A lot of us guys spend a lot of time thinking about passing on our inheritance, how do we minimize taxes, when our children, take over for us. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But the most important thing we're going to pass on to our children is a sense of an ethical framework of what's right and what's wrong, a framework that can serve them when they themselves face, difficult, complicated decisions. And that's something that is so vitally important to our kids' future. Keep them out of jail, keep them out of trouble, keep them out of morally, incorrect choices that not only can harm them, but can harm their families and, their legacies forever. And it's something that, it takes over. It's not just saying to your kids once, this is right, this is wrong. It's really, continuing to talk the talk, but also to walk the walk. And the reason that humility is part of that tool is that we make mistakes. We dads, I make mistakes all the time, and frankly, we all do. And it's important to be able to say to the kids when they see this, because the kids are good observers, and they recognize hypocrisy right away. And to say, something, I made a mistake there, and I really want to ask God's forgiveness, and I have, and I want to ask your forgiveness, your children, wife, whatever. And, I want to make this good, and I want you to really ask you to pray for me so that, I can be better in this thing. That's incredibly freeing to our kids because, one, it helps them recognize that, reality, we all fall short of God's glory, but also the fact that we have a path to be forgiven and to be cleansed, in our heart of hearts. That's the beautiful thing about the Christian faith, that the blood of the Lamb can clean up that inner heart of ours, which, none of us can do by ourselves.
Gregory Slayton with us, and we will come back and talk a little bit more with him. We have a link to BeTheBestMomYouCanBe.com, but you don't have to remember all that. It's already got a link there. We're also going to talk about how you can be a blessing not only to your family, but to a military family. And we're going to take some things from this new book, Be the Best Mom You Can Be, a practical guide to raising whole children in a broken generation. We'll continue our conversation right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Last month, Marilyn Sinek walked into a Nebraska coffee shop for her weekly ritual of coffee and crepes. What she received was a torrent of angry words, which I cannot repeat on radio. A woman who worked at the coffee shop recognized that Marilyn worked for the Nebraska Family Alliance and shouted at her and demanded that she leave. Marilyn said that she was stunned by this reaction, as were the other patrons in the crowded shop. She said she's always treated the employees of the shop with respect and courtesy and never broadcast her pro-life, pro-family beliefs. After sharing her experience with her Facebook friends, her story generated lots of comments and made the local news. Marilyn then learned that the woman who shouted at her and refused service was fired for her outburst, and in a previous age, that would have been the end of the story. Not in our world today. While Marilyn received an apology from the coffee shop owner, she also received lots of hateful messages, including graphic death threats from complete strangers. Then came the unfair slander of Nebraska Family Alliance. She noted that if even a fraction of these negative stories about the group were true, she wouldn't work there. Of course, some tried to argue the moral equivalence to Jack Phillips at Masterpiece Cake Shop. She reminded us that Jack will sell you any baked goods, but did draw the line at making custom cakes celebrating Halloween, bachelor parties, and same-sex ceremonies. She even added that if a printer did not want to design a poster for a Nebraska Family Alliance event, she would understand and go to another business. You know, the negative reaction to her story illustrates we unfortunately have a long way to go before true tolerance becomes a reality. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For more information about issues covered on Viewpoints, visit pointofview.net. Pointofview.net.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Privileged to have with us today Gregory Slayton, who has served as an ambassador, also entrepreneur and teacher at major universities. He is the co-author of the book, Be the Best Mom You Can Be, and of course the author of the previous book we mentioned, Be a Better Dad Today. And Greg, just before we get into the content of the book, I thought we might mention the fact that you've had such a heart for those in the military. And even as people go to BeTheBestMomYouCanBe.com, which we have there, you have the Buy One, Give One program. And that's a way that our listeners, if they choose to do so, can be a real blessing to military families.
No, that's absolutely right, Kerby. And let me apologize. My wife, Marina, who, of course, wrote most of the book, Be the Best Mom You Can Be, is sick today. She would have loved to have been on your program. But no, we are a military family. Our eldest daughter is a first lieutenant in the U.S. military. And my dad, unfortunately, came back from service in the Navy.
Yes.
He was never quite the same afterwards. In fact, a few years after he returned, he left. He left us and abandoned us and was never heard from again until his death 25 years later. So it's hard to be a mom or a dad. It's especially hard when you're in the military. And so we are doing this buy one, give one free program. And what that means is that for any book, either of these books, the Be the Best Mom You Can Be or Be a Better Dad Today, that is purchased anywhere off your website, off from Amazon, wherever. In the month of June, we will be giving a free book to a U.S. military mom or dad with our profound gratitude and thanks for their service and prayers for their family.
Again, it's called the Home Program, Help Our Military Every Family. And so, again, we so often try to find ways to honor those of you serving in the military. That is another way to do so. And if you're a chaplain, you can contact Greg, and there are just all sorts of options. So I'll let you go to the website, which we have up there, BeTheBestMomYouCanBe.com. And I know, Greg, that you've had a real heart for that, and I thank you for all that you've already done in the past with your book, Be a Better Dad Today. And I think some of this will now happen with this new book, Be the Best Mom You Can Be.
Well, thanks, Kerby. It's an honor to be of this small service. And again, we just want to honor those who protect us and our way of life and, frankly, defend civilization all around the world. You know, I've lived all over the world, and the truth is the U.S. military is the bulwark of civilization in our world. And so we're just so thankful for them.
One of the things your wife talks about early on is elusive perfection. You know, she was raised by a broken mom, but did not become a broken mom. And it reminded me of a TED Talk I've heard you give, where you ask everybody in the audience, how many people want to be a success? Most of the hands go up. How many people want failure? No hands go up. And then you say, wait a minute. You know, all of you to be successful are going to have some failures in your life. And there's a sense in which maybe what we can do right now is tell every mom out there, you're going to make some mistakes. There are going to be some failures, but that shouldn't set you back from being the best mom you can be.
No, that's exactly right, Kerby. We want to, you know, it's a word of freedom for all of us, right? That Jesus doesn't expect us to be perfect. You know, our God doesn't expect us to be perfect, and our society wants to hold all of us, but especially moms. This is something that my wife really has keyed into. You know, you're supposed to be the perfect homemaker, the perfect wife, the perfect mom, the perfect party giver. You're supposed to, you know, be 20 pounds underweight or whatever. I mean, just, you know, all these incredible expectations. Kids are supposed to go to Ivy League schools, and you're supposed to make it all effortless. That's just not reality. And so I think the first thing that Marina points out here is that, you know, we don't have to buy in, and we shouldn't buy in to society's crazy expectations, that we just need to be the best mom we can be or the best dad we can be, and really to, you know, forgive ourselves and to know that the Lord forgives us when we make mistakes, when we get a little short-tempered or we make the wrong judgment call about this or that. And that's just part of the whole thing. But really, it's all about love. And just like it says in the good book, love covers a multitude of, you know, failures or mistakes or whatever you want to call it.
She talks about that as love as a foundation, and it's really the well of forgiveness. You just talked about forgiveness a minute ago, but certainly this idea of love, very important, forgiveness, very important, recognizing that we're going to make mistakes as parents, but that should not keep us from trying to strive to do the very best we can. And, of course, 1 Corinthians 13 is the love chapter, and you apply that to how we actually raise our children.
Well, that's it. I mean, 1 Corinthians 13 promises us love never fails. You know, and it's interesting. A lot of times when we speak, parents will say, well, you know, my teenagers have kind of gone off the path, or my 20-year-old isn't going to church or something. And, you know, the word is very clear. It says, raise up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Right? It doesn't say that all his life he's going to be, you know, following the straight and narrow. We just have to do the best we can do. And what that means is really loving our kids. Of course, you know, disciplining them. We have the 10-to-1 rule. You might remember 10 parts love and affirmation and attaboy for every 1 part discipline. But discipline's important too. The point is, though, that, you know, we're not God, and we cannot guarantee the end. God gives each one of our children free will, and sometimes children use that free will in ways that are not good. But in the end, we've got to believe, we've got to know that our Heavenly Father loves our kids even more than we do. And He's going to help us to be the best moms and the best dads we can be, and He's going to help our children to come to Him and to know His love.
Greg, I think as people would be reading through this book, there'd be a lot of times they'd be shaking their heads, but by the time they got to chapter 3, they go, huh? Because it's all about vision. And I know that you have a family vision, and you have developed that. But I would imagine that if I were to go out in the street right now and talk to a dozen people on the street with a microphone and ask them, do you have a family vision? nobody would probably say yes, and a few of them would say, what? That doesn't even make any sense. But talk about how vision and your family vision is very important to your family and is something we should adopt in all of our families.
Well, Kerby, just think about it from this perspective. Nothing is built without planning, right? Not your successful radio program, not my house, not even my kid's bicycle. Nothing is built without a plan. And that's the point of having what we call a noble family vision or a family plan. Where do we want to be when we're 65 or 70 years old? Where do we want our kids to be? Where do we want to be as a family? Right? That's the goal. That's where we're going. And then how are we going to get there? Right? How are we going to get there? Step by step, month by month, year by year. That's the plan. And I believe that nothing good is built by accident. And as it says in the Bible, without vision or without a plan, the people perish. So that's why we laid out in both books, in Be a Better Dad Today and Be the Best Mom You Can Be, a full chapter on a noble family vision and how to build that plan. And we hope that it's a blessing to folks. It's something that we just kind of came up with ourselves. We didn't read about it in another book or something. We just thought, this is something we need, and it has proven to be a big benefit and a real blessing to our family. And we've heard from, hundreds, maybe thousands of other families who've put it into practice since these books came out, and it seems to have been a little bit of a blessing to folks. So we just hope and pray that it's a blessing to many others as well.
Many people might say, why is it called a noble plan? Well, that goes back to Isaiah 32:8. The noble man devises noble plans, and by noble plans he stands. So that is certainly a plan that we should have. And just before we take another break, let's talk about how people can use this, because we'll pick out a few other chapters, but you have a whole section here on for further reflection after each chapter. God's Word, the author's words, some assessment and summing up. This is something that a couple can go through individually. I would think this would be a very good small group discussion as well. And now that you have the two books, Be a Better Dad Today and Be the Best Mom You Can Be, you could cover all the bases necessary for a family to consider what they need to do to be the best mom and dad possible.
Well, that's the idea. It's it's not just about the book, right? It's really about helping people to go forward in life. And that's why we wanted to leave at the end of every chapter a section for reflection, for discussion. Maybe it's with your girlfriends, maybe it's with your husband, or for the guys, maybe it's with your buddies or your wife, but something that can help us really take these ideas and put them into practice. That's the whole key. Life change in a positive way, as Jesus said, by your fruits, they will know you. And so we want to see in our own lives, in the lives of our children, in the lives of our friends and all our brothers and sisters, change. Positive change is a wonderful thing.
Might just say that when we come back from the break, we're going to get into some very tough questions. And this is one of the things, again, I appreciate about Gregory Slayton's books, because in the previous one, he talked about single dads. This one talks about single moms. Whole chapter there on sex, drugs, and rock and roll, asking really important questions about, tough questions. What about busyness? We have this problem of too many choices, too little time, and the busy lives that we live. And so we're going to get into some very practical suggestions from this new book, Be the Best Mom You Can Be, a practical guide, _practical guide to raising whole children in a broken generation. And, of course, if you'd like to join a conversation, you're welcome to do so. 1-800-351-1212. We'll be back right after this.
There's an old saying that the first casualty in war is truth. Maybe that helps you understand what's happening in America right now. Thankfully, it's not a war with bullets, but there is a war for control. Control of the country and control of your pocketbook. Truth is under fire, but you can help turn the tide by supporting Truth. Join the Truth Team at Point of View Radio. Learn how you can make a difference at pointofview.net/team or call 800-347-5151. Don't let truth become a casualty on your watch. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151.
So what would you do with an extra $500 a month in your budget? Pay off loans, save it, do something fun? Well, it's something you may need to think about if you become a member of MetaShare MediShare is a Christian healthcare sharing ministry, and it works. You can save big time on your healthcare costs, and you don't have to pay for things you don't believe in either. Find out more. Call 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour, if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. What have you been doing in your family to raise up the next generation of godly children? And certainly we would love to hear from you. Perhaps some of the things that you have found are effective, or perhaps you have a question for Gregory Slayton. We would welcome your phone calls today, 1-800-351-1212. This, of course, is a book that would be appropriate at any time of the year. But, of course, we also want to mention the other book, Be a Better Dad Today. That is certainly one that you could give to Dad on Father's Day coming up. Or, of course, any one of these could be something that you could use in your small group study or individual studies. So please take the time to find out more about some of these books. And as we've mentioned before, when you purchase a book, another book is sent to military families. And so those of you in the military, we thank you for your service. Never be able to thank you enough for all that you have done to provide our freedom. And this is a way that we can be an encouragement to you. And we certainly salute Gregory and Marina Slayton for making that possible. So, again, you can find out more about this in just a minute as we open up the phones. But, Gregory, let me just, before I take some phone calls, maybe get into that chapter I mentioned a minute ago, Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. The subtitle of the book is, Raising Whole Children in a Broken Generation. We face greater challenges, I think, today because of, premarital sex and because of redefinition of marriage and because of social media and because of the internet and television. And it's really enticing young people to get involved in sex and drugs. Of course, you also talk about the occult and all sorts of other issues. So what would you say to parents right now that are saying, it is really tough to raise kids? How do we do this?
Well, it is tough to raise kids, Kerby. It's been tough always, but it's especially tough now because the primacy of the family and the primacy of mom and dad and uncles and aunts and grandma and grandpa as the place you learn what's right and wrong has really been changed. So many kids today learn right and wrong on the internet.
Yes.
They learn right and wrong on television. And that's not a winning that's not a winning strategy for teaching right and wrong. So it's critical for us as moms and dads to be even more involved because we can't 100, 200 years ago, you could pretty much be sure that your neighbors had a similar understanding of right and wrong as you did, and your kids, they went to school and they'd have teachers who had a real, pretty similar understanding. That's not true at all today. Not true at all. So we have to help our children realize, there are, other definitions of right and wrong. I mean, we have teachers in our public school who basically are in favor of, kids using marijuana and stuff. And we have to stand very strongly against that and many other similar types of things and explain to our kids, look, we're not just making this up. We're not just saying it because, we just decided one day where this is the way we feel. There are many, many reasons, both biblical and scientific, that premarital sex is not good, right? Not good for you in the long term. It's not good for you. It's not good for you in the short term in many ways. Or smoking, or drinking to excess, or using drugs, or getting involved in the occult. We have to really help our children understand that why we believe very strongly. These are good things, or in these cases, these are very negative things, and help them understand that over time.
Very practical suggestions in that chapter, but let's take some phone calls along the way. In California first, Rebecca, you're on with Gregory Slayton.
Hi, Gregory. I was just wanting to call in and comment because this is a topic that's so deep impressed in my heart because I'm a 32-year-old stay-at-home mom. I have two boys. And every day I face the temptation and the battle to want to do what I want to do versus, stop and tend to my children. And I was just giving the example of how sometimes I feel it's so necessary to check in on the news. But, my boys might be bickering and arguing in the background. And I really have to be in prayer all day long with the Lord and asking him, Lord, what do you want me to do right now? Because the most important thing would be, even though the news is important, the most important thing is I need to be at peace in my spirit, be conversing with the Lord, and go over there and minister to my children because they are so, this time, I can't let it pass and slip. I need to stop whatever it is I'm doing, no matter how important I think it is, and get down on their level and speak to their little spirits because it's just too important. I can't let that moment pass. Wow. And even, for example, for right now, my son, he wants me to play with him, but I have things to do, and so I said, here, you can help Mommy and wash these beans. And so he's playing in the sink right now while I get to do something that I really want to do and call in. And, but we're working together and washing beans, and I'm still going, I'm still involved listening on the radio, and I get, so it can work. You can do the things you want to do.
Amen, Rebecca. Amen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I was just adding one more to that. How many parents are we seeing now when they're with their kids are looking at their smartphones instead of looking at their kids? So there's a real choice that parents are going to have to make in the future because of these digital devices and because of all these distractions. Don't you think, Greg?
Well, absolutely. And let me first say, Rebecca, God bless you for being a mom who loves her kids and who's involved with her kids. Let me put it like this, neither you nor I right now, Rebecca, are going to change the news, change the where world history is going. But your boys, because of your love and because of your dedication to them, one of them could grow up to be a U.S. Senator. Another might grow up to be a CEO or President of the United States. You don't know. But you are investing in their lives, and that investment is going to pay huge dividends, not just for them and their families, but for our society. And that's what you have to keep in mind, that you are ministering to your children, and that is such a wonderful ministry. But you're also helping build, the next generation of America. And God bless you. That is such wonderful and important work.
I think so. Again, Rebecca, thank you for calling. We'll take some more phone calls in just a minute. 1-800-351-1212. Greg, tell your wife that we will miss her for this reason alone, and there are many, but one of those is that her chapter on breaking generational curses, wholeness is possible, wanted to have her tell the story, but I think you can tell it pretty well, and that is some are going to be saying, oh, this really sounds great, Greg, but this is pie in the sky. You do not know the father I had. You do not know the broken mother I had. And Marina would say, oh, yes, I do, because, her father was from like Russia. Her mother was like from Poland. There was a brokenness there that is pretty significant, and the success that you've had is a testimony to both of you working together to bring about wholeness.
Well, thanks, Kerby. Yeah, you never want to speak ill of the dead, but just to be honest, her mom, whom I knew, was a severe alcoholic and had some real emotional control issues. She would throw stuff around the house. I mean, it was bad.
Yes.
And the idea of breaking generational curses, I think all of us realize that we get both blessings and, let's just say, non-blessings, from our family, and we inherit some good things and some not so good things. The great news is that by God's Spirit, we can break those generational curses and make sure that we don't pass them on to our children, no matter what they were. I think you remember that my father abandoned my brothers and myself when I was young, and he had a lot of real bad, serious issues in his life as well. And, Marina and I are just devoted to not passing those things on to our kids. And the good news is, sure, it's a battle, and that's absolutely true. But the good news is, by God's grace and His Spirit, we can do that. And that's why we wrote a chapter on breaking generational curses in the book, because it is so important.
There are obviously some practical things you can do, but one, of course, is the issue of forgiveness. Another one is to actually maybe move ahead with those vision statements you've talked about as well, because once you have a positive vision, you can leave some of the negative experiences in your rearview mirror as you're looking out the front. So it seems to me there's some real concrete steps that you talk about in the book. So maybe we can talk about that when we come back from the break, and I'll get a few more phone calls, and we'll see if we can also maybe slip in at least one other chapter on the issue of time, because that chapter 10, Parenting in an Age of Busy. Time famine is a problem, but certainly we want to talk about that. And it just, again, illustrates how practical these two books are. I mentioned before the book by Greg Slayton, Be a Better Dad Today, the foreword there by Charles Colson when he was alive, and this foreword in this new book, Be the Best Mom You Can Be, by Kathy McMorris Rogers, who, of course, known and had on the program as well. So we're going to take a break. We will get a few more phone calls, maybe not many because it's going to be tight on time, but we'll do our best to try to pick up some of those. And if you'd like to know more about either of these books, you can find it on our website, pointofview.net. And, of course, we have a link to Be the Better Be the Best Mom You Can Be website as well. So let's take a break. We'll come back with more right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Gregory Slayton with us for a few more minutes. If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Let's head out to Texas this time. KBJS. Stephen, you're on with Greg Slayton.
Hey, Mr. Slayton. As a 23-year-old single guy, what would you recommend I focus on in this time of singleness to prepare for marriage and fatherhood?
Well, Stephen, that's a fabulous question, and God bless you for thinking about that. Most 23-year-olds are, not thinking about that.
That's not thinking about that, that's right.
Good man. I think, hey, I've got a wonderful daughter, Stephen. Maybe I can introduce you guys. But seriously, what I think you got to be thinking about is character. John McCain, who is a wonderful guy, wrote a book called Character is Destiny. And, I don't care whether you're talking about, professionally or personally, character is destiny. And you want to marry a woman of great and noble character. The key is she wants to marry a man of great and noble character. And it sounds like to me, Stephen, that you're well just to have the maturity to ask that question and really be seriously thinking about that. is a really good thing. I hope you do get a copy of the book, because to be the Be a Best Dad You Can Be book, because I think that will give you some tips in terms of where you have to go character-wise to be a good dad. But again, hey brother, you're on your way, I think, and humility important. All the aspects of character that the good book talks about. Those are things that all of us. I'm way older than you are, and still working on, still recognize, so important. But just remember this: character is destiny.
Yeah, 10 tools of fatherhood, and so those are some tools to put in your toolbox, and some of those you can be working on long before you ever get married, and so I certainly would commend that book to him. And of course, for you women, be the best mom you can be. And I thought, just before we run out of time, let's talk about Chapter 10, Parenting in an Age of Busy, Time is Our Friend. And she talks about the tyranny of the trivial. Sometimes we get our priorities out of whack, and we tend to think that these small, trivial things are so important. And you really need to come back to another one of the chapters she has on having kind of an eternal perspective, don't you?
No, that's exactly right, Kerby. In fact, I would say that our society wants us to focus on what really is the trivial. Do I have the right breakfast cereal? Do I have the right makeup on? Or for us guys, whatever my hair looks like or whatever. I mean, there's lots of small things that we can worry about, but in the end, don't matter at all. What really matters is, the first the two great commandments. Love the Lord our God with all our heart and soul and strength and mind, and love our neighbor. And our neighbor certainly includes our sons and our daughters. Love our neighbors and our wife, or as our spouse. Love our neighbors as ourselves. That's what really matters in this life. And just as we were talking about earlier, love is the most powerful tool there is for good in this world. And we as moms and dads can really use that tool and help our children to master it themselves.
One of the things Marina talks about is the story of Susanna Wesley, who was the mother of John and Charles Wesley. Again, two of the most influential Christians in the 18th century, a large part of the awakenings that took place there in England, and even that came over here to the United States as well. And yet here, an individual that spent time in God's Word, spent time in prayer, and built into those, she had a profound impact indirectly through her sons, and I think a great example of that virtuous woman that you read about in Proverbs 31.
No, that's exactly right. And I was just thinking about Rebecca, who called in from California just a few minutes ago. There she is ministering to her children, spending time with them. And, who knows? Maybe those boys are going to grow up to be like the Wesley boys. I mean, you just never know. It's such a wonderful and powerful ministry, the ministry of motherhood, as my wife writes about extensively. And for us guys, the ministry of fatherhood. And it really is God's gift to our world. Susanna Wesley basically was a single mom. And, she had a husband, but the husband spent very, very little time with the family. It was kind of a ne'er-do-well. But she never turned on him, never, got bitter. She really learned to trust the Lord and to love his word, and through that, to love her children. And as you say, huge impact, not just on Britain, but on the United States. In fact, I'm in New England, where during the revivals that were led by the Wesleys, literally millions of people on the East Coast really came to a deep and faith commitment to our Lord, and that changed the history both of Britain and the United States of America.
One other thing I thought it was very powerful in that chapter is how relationships are important and making time for lifelong friendships. In this busyness of our lives today, we don't value friendship and relationships as much as we should. It certainly seems to me that that's another way in which we sort of can counter-program to the culture, can't we?
Absolutely right. The Bible makes it clear that we are to love others as we love ourselves, and certainly that is about relationship and doing life together. Doesn't mean hundreds and hundreds of people, but at least having a small handful of true friends. It's something that Christians can do. We don't have to, pretend to be somebody that we're not. We don't have to try and impress other folks. We can just be who we are, and that is and that's the basis of friendship. So, caring for other people, being honest and transparent with others, and really helping them and loving them and having them in turn help and love us. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's not something that comes easily in the 21st century where, it seems everybody has thousands of Facebook friends, but no real friends.
Yeah.
Or, very few real friends. It's something that we have to deliberately stop, take time, reach out and touch, the old friends. Maybe they don't live, maybe we've moved, maybe they've moved, but you know something? We need to stay in touch. We need to keep that friendship going and make new friends as well. It's one of the great blessings of life.
Might just again mention the previous book, Be a Better Dad Today, 10 Tools Every Father Needs. And you can go to that website, beabetterdadtoday.com. And of course, we spent some time as well talking about this book, Be the Best Mom You Can Be, a practical guide to raising whole children in a broken generation. And that website is bethebestmomucanbe.com. But again, we have links on the website to find that. And Greg, again, I appreciate the fact that you have partnered with us over the years, and especially thank you so very much for the vision you have of not only helping families, but then taking extra copies of these and passing them on to military families so that they can be all that they need to be as fathers and mothers. So thank you for once again joining us here on Point of View.
Kerby, always a great pleasure to be with you. And yes, every single book that's sold, either of the books, Be a Better Dad Today or Be the Best Mom You Can Be, every single book that's sold in the month of June, we'll be giving a free copy to a U.S. military mom or dad. But Kerby, thanks again for all you do. I really love your show. Listen to it. Appreciate your ministry, and it's an honor to be on with you.
Always great to have you on the program. And again, let me just mention that we have done previous interviews with Ambassador Slayton as well as this one. So if you'd like to find out more about some of the material that is available through them, about being the best mom you can be, or about raising kids and being a good father, just some great material that is available on our website. And of course, you can use the search engine to find some of that information, and I think that would be helpful to you. Again, just before we end the program today, don't forget that we do have an opportunity for you to listen to any one of the interviews we've done today. You can watch them as well. You can, of course, get my viewpoints commentary. And as I mentioned just an hour ago, if you can help us out financially, we would greatly appreciate that. As we come into this time of year, we certainly do depend upon your financial gifts. So anything you can do to help us would be greatly appreciated. I want to thank Andrew and Steve for their help behind the scenes. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
So when people first hear about Medishare, they have questions. Some good ones, like, what is it? Well, Medishare is a Christian healthcare sharing ministry. It's not health insurance. It's a different way of doing things, which leads us to this question. Why do so many become Medishare members? Two big reasons. They save a lot. The typical family saves $500 a month, and they feel great about it. With Medishare, you aren't forced to pay for things you don't believe in. Find out more. 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40.
It seems we can't get through a day without hearing how science has been corrupted to support political goals. Media entities have sold out truth for the sake of favored narratives. Even some religious groups have abandoned the Bible to support things based on feelings. So who can you trust? Kerby Anderson and the Point of View Truth Team are your source for real news. Learn how you can make a difference by joining the team at pointofview.net/team or call 800-347-5151. In a world of unending fog, Point of View is a shining light. Do your part at pointofview.net/team or 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.